right, folks, we've had people from all walks of black life here on NewsOne Now, some provocative conversations. And here's one beginning with my man, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, who talked about some of the issues he was thinking about during his tenure as the nation's first black attorney general. How do you see us confronting this uneasiness, this anger that exists between police departments and between community?
I have been going around the country doing what we call these rebuilding trust roundtables. I was in Oakland, have been in Memphis, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Atlanta, dealing with this issue, trying to bring community members, faith leaders, youth, members from law enforcement together to talk about these issues, to talk about the lack of trust that exists in certain places, the fact that trust has been eroded in certain other places. And I think really the key to this is dialogue, for people to get into a room and talk about the fears that they have as community members, but also to listen to people in law enforcement about the fears that they have and about the split-second decisions that they have to make and their concerns about, being second-guessed. If we have an ability, as we have tried to do through this roundtable tour, if we have an ability to bring people together to talk about these issues, I'm really confident that you can bridge the gap that I think exists in too many places around our country and bring law enforcement together so that they have a better relationship with the communities that they serve.
Has it been painful for you to watch what's happening with voting rights?
Yeah.
Here we are 50 years after the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
And having to deal with this constant battle, not just with voter ID, but Supreme Court decision, the changing of polling locations. And so here we are in this era where we have 50 years of progress, but all of a sudden there's these efforts to suppress the vote, to pretty much try to limit access to the ballot.
I mean, if you had told me 6 years ago, coming in as Attorney General of the United States, that one of the primary concerns I would have would be the protection of the right to vote, I would have looked at you with a strange look. But that is, in fact, the reality. A Supreme Court decision that I think was wrongly decided, certain states taking advantage of that opinion to try to put in place measures that are supposed to involve the integrity of the vote, but in fact I think are political moves to try to make it more difficult for political opponents of parties in power to be able to cast ballots.
Well, first of all, I am really relieved and pleased that overall we're making progress. And I have gone across this country making the point that when President Obama came into office, he inherited the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. And he doesn't get the credit he deserves for digging us out of that big hole that he was handed when he came in. So it's been a long, slow effort, which thanks to him and his leadership and many, many millions of Americans, we are exactly where Roland said we are, down to 5% unemployment, jobs are coming back, but incomes are not rising. And so we have two big problems. One, we got to get incomes for everybody to go back up. And number two, we got to get more good jobs, and we do need, in my opinion, a targeted effort at people and communities that have not had the benefits of the recovery thus far, and we need to go even further. This is an issue that I just think we have got to address. I understand how politically challenging it is. 90 people a day die in our country from guns. Homicide, suicide, and avoidable accidents like what the gentleman was referring to. And it is imperative that people make this a voting issue. I know we can balance the legitimate rights of gun owners with the right to be safe going to school or going to church, the right to have more control over what happens in people going to stores to buy guns who shouldn't have them. So here's what I am proposing. Number one, we need universal background checks for real. We need to close the gun show loophole. We need to close the online loophole because people are buying guns and ammunition online. You have no idea who they are, and we know some of the mass murderers, that's how they got what they used to kill people. We need to close what's called the Charleston loophole. The Charleston loophole is unfortunately, what enabled that young man to get a gun he was not entitled to.
Did you think, when you stood on the steps of the U.S. Capitol 20 years ago, that we would be literally having the same conversation 20 years later?
I could not see that far, but it is tragic that what brought us to the mall 20 years ago has intensified now, even with the president of America being a black man. Now we are suffering greatly because in that 20 years, since the Million Man March, we had the growth of the prison industrial complex, and Bill Clinton, whom we thought was the first black president, on his watch, more black men and women were imprisoned. Jails became filled with black men, and we went to work for IBM and Motorola and other Fortune 500 companies in prison. We learned how to do what they do in their factories, but when we were released as felons, we couldn't any longer get a job. So slavery, we went back into slavery by being a felon, so the guarantee of the 13th Amendment no longer suited us.
I think, Roland, the conversations that we've been having in the barbershop and around the kitchen table really bubble to the surface. And so I think it's important, one, that we're having a conversation openly, and then we can really begin to address the issues. The affordability issue is a huge issue in the city of Atlanta, and you heard a lot of angry voices. And, you know, it's interesting. We saw people on the north side consolidate very quickly around one candidate, and on the south side, we were still splintered. But at the end of the day, everybody's talking about the same thing in Atlanta. We're talking about criminal justice reform, traffic, affordability, education, all the things that matter to people, and that transcends race. So I just look forward to leading the city, and our mantra has been keeping the progress and making sure we're not leaving our communities behind, and that's going to be our focus.
Well, I know you have a busy morning, other interviews to do all across the city. We surely thank you for joining us here on TV1's NewsOne Now.
Well, thank you for bringing attention to Atlanta. It really made a difference. I appreciate you.
And this is the first interview we're doing, and I want to really thank you so much for really talking about our race and giving us that kind of exposure in the primary and in the general. And it was a great night. It was a historic night, and I think we can do some amazing things on behalf of Virginia's families going forward.
One of the things that, of course, I mean, obviously you had to defeat your Republican opponent, right, Jill Vogel, but you had a hell of a time even with your own party just trying to get through the nomination. I mean, we first had you on when they wouldn't let you speak at the state convention.
Yeah, no, it seems like a lifetime ago, but, you know, a little over a year ago. And the thing is, I think people have realized now that people want people in politics who are genuine, who are fighting for our families, and who have a positive, progressive message. And that's the wave that happened last night in Virginia. And as I said, Virginia will be the match that sparks the wildfire of progressive change really all around the country. And I think we have a chance to do some great things. And people really do not like the politics of personal attack and of negativity. And I think we're changing the way the game is played.
All right, folks, see, that's why this show matters, because, see, guess what? None of the national shows wanted Justin Fairfax on when he was running for lieutenant governor, but then after the brother win, everybody all of a sudden want to call him. We put him on when the Virginia Democratic Party was trying to screw him over speaking at a state convention. See, that's why black media matters. See, we know you before they know you. Now then, when they know you, after we put you on first, it's good when a brother like Justin Fairfax comes back and says, no, I'm doing you first because you put me on first, which is what I said when I won the NAACP Best Host Image Award to Black Hollywood, to tell your publicist, when we call, you better return the damn phone call.